I've just got a couple of housekeeping that I would like to share with you. I'm hoping that you can all hear me. So if you can just type yes into the chat box that you can hear me, that would be great. Then I will know that everything is working well. The webinar, I'll be talking for about 30 minutes during this webinar, and there'll be time for some questions at the end. So please do use the chat box for writing any of your questions that you've got. Also to let you know that the webinar is being recorded, and I will send out a copy of the recording to you either today or tomorrow. So just to give you a little bit of information about me, I set up Helen Pettiford Training in 2016 with the aim of raising standards and practices within customer service. And my passion for supporting vulnerable customers really came with a brief conversation I had early last year, 2018, and it set the seed in my mind. I also have my eldest son has got special needs, so we've faced challenges along the way with organisations on how they can support him. So I've spent a lot of time researching and training with organisations to really understand how we can support all people, not just customers, but everybody who are facing difficult and challenging circumstances, and really treat them fairly and respectfully. So in July, the Financial Conduct Authority launched or published their draft guidance for firms on the fair treatment of vulnerable customers. This was very much long awaited, and I personally was very excited to see exactly what sort of guidelines and guidance they were going to put in place for firms on how to support vulnerable customers. And if you didn't manage to see a copy of that, I can definitely email you that, because it does really make good reading. So please do let me know if you'd like me to drop that in an email to you. The guidance is in its consultation period, so it's just really sort of starting off finding out what firms can do. And the guidance is split into 4 different sections. So the first section is understanding the needs of vulnerable customers. The second section covers the skills and the capability of staff. The third section is all about taking practical action. And the fourth section is about monitoring and evaluation. So what I'm going to do today is just a short webinar, but I'm just going to pick some key elements from each of these sections with some practical examples that I've come across of where customers have shown good practice, and actually maybe even some that where the company hasn't shown good practice, just to give you an idea of where to start and how to be moving forward with your vulnerable customer strategy and supporting your customers. So the first one is all about understanding the needs of vulnerable customers. And the key item I wanted to put here is item number 30. So all of the guidelines are numbered. So I've put the numbers in this webinar for you so you can refer back to when I send that through to you. But ultimately, the first section is all about creating that foundation, really understanding what vulnerability is, how it affects people, how it impacts people's lives, and understand the needs of vulnerable customers. And in the guidance, the FCA have put a table in with the 4 key drivers of vulnerability, and you can see from the top they've got the 4 sections: health, life events, resilience, and capability. And it's absolutely crucial that firms research and understand and train their staff to understand what the different situations and circumstances are. A lot of people believe that vulnerable customers are those who are elderly, living with dementia, or have mental health conditions. But as you can see from this table, it's a lot more in depth, it's a lot broader than those vulnerabilities. I really do want to pick up on life events because life events really do play a crucial role in individuals and how it can lead them to becoming vulnerable. Life throws us lots of curveballs, and sometimes these circumstances and situations can significantly impact our mental clarity and our decision making, meaning that we don't always make the right decision for us at that time. It's also important for firms to understand that vulnerability is very complex, and it's not static, and it moves, people's needs change, and often they overlap. So when you look at the table here, you can see that there are possibly circumstances where it would overlap. So take, for example, an individual who's suffering from bereavement, going through a bereavement. They may actually develop anxiety and stress, and can incur financial challenges and hardships as they're moving through their bereavement. So it really can impact them. So this is ultimately the foundation stone. So within your organization, this is really where you need to begin to start taking a real research and interest into what vulnerability is and how it can really impact your customers. The next point I want to bring up in this section is really understanding that what you do as a firm can really impact the customer. It can really perpetuate the vulnerability that customer's going through. So I've got a couple of case studies this morning to show you. And the first case study I'm going to share with you is the case study of Claire. Now, I came across Claire's story in the BBC News a couple of weeks ago, and it sort of really resonated with me. So Claire's been living with economic abuse from her partner for a while now, and her partner has taken every personal item of hers that was her proof of identity. So he'd taken her passport, her bank statement, and her documents, and she literally had nothing to prove who she was. She did actually manage to break free of that relationship, and she began to build her new life, but she obviously needed funds. So she went to the bank to gain access to their joint account. However, she didn't have any ID, and the bank refused to give her access to it. They insisted that they needed her partner, her ex-partner, to come in and verify who she was. Obviously, that was not possible. It took a lot of time, a lot of stress, but finally she managed to get access to that account, only to find that the funds weren't there. He'd drained the account. And Claire then moved on to a safe house and started to rebuild her life. However, while she was at that safe house, Claire received a letter from her bank addressed to both her and her ex-partner, and she realised that actually he had received a duplicate letter with her address on it, with her new address on it. So he now knew where she was living. So this is a prime example of how the actions of a firm can really perpetuate a customer's vulnerability. So Claire not only felt vulnerable because she was starting afresh again, but now she had an additional vulnerability because she was now physically at risk of harm from her ex-partner. So this is sort of obviously a sort of a poor example of customers working together with the customer in the best interest for them. But I've got a couple of good examples here. So following on from this economic abuse topic, TSB actually now have a procedure in place that allows cards and PIN numbers to be sent to an address which is not the customer's registered one. So if there's a customer who is in that situation and they need to set up a new bank account to maybe look to escape the relationship, they're able to designate a safe house, a safe person, that somebody that they trust, that they can send that information to, so it's available for them once they're free from that relationship. And also HSBC and Barclays, they both have processes in place to offer either a national or a safe sort code. So as you may be aware, sort codes are generated from the location of where you're living, which can give abusers access to know where their victims are living if they've moved and they've set up a new bank account. So actually, by giving a generic national sort code or even a safe sort code, it can help to keep that victim safe, keep that customer safe from any further harm. So again, it's sort of from a company point of view, start to think about some of the actions or even the inactions, something that maybe you failed to do as an organisation that could really impact the vulnerability of that customer. Start having conversations with your staff about what they think is good practice, because they're the ones that are sort of at the front line dealing every day with your customers. So that's a really key element from understanding the needs of vulnerable customers. So this is the first section, and it is absolutely fundamental to get that foundation and that knowledge of vulnerabilities. The next section in the guidance deals with the skills and the capabilities of the staff. Your frontline staff are absolutely crucial to working with the customer, meeting their needs, and delivering an experience that protects them and helps them to get through these circumstances that they find themselves in. And what the FCA are looking to achieve is that even if that organisation can't help, it's great for staff to have the knowledge and the resources to be able to signpost or offer additional support as and when they feel it's appropriate. So the next case study I've got is the story of Ray. Ray was diagnosed with cancer about 5 months ago, and he had to give up his job. He was having regular treatment at the hospitals, and he was just physically and emotionally exhausted from everything that he was going through, and just felt that he wasn't able to carry on with his job. Ray owns his own house, and he recently had a telephone conversation with the Building Society, because he had actually fallen behind and had missed 3 months mortgage payments. And he was obviously nervous about calling, but the whole conversation that he had with the Building Society advisor was calming, and he felt a lot more comfortable to tell her the situation he was finding himself in. And he also mentioned that he had fallen behind on other bills and payments, and he was struggling to cover the costs on those as well. So the Building Society advisor just took the time. She patiently listened to Ray, to what he was explaining, and asked him some questions. And she was able to offer him a 2-month mortgage holiday with immediate effect. And also, whilst they're on the telephone, they discussed possible options on how he could repay those missed payments over time, so that it didn't impact him on his credit rating, or didn't have any diverse sort of impact on him with those missed payments. She also looked at the bigger picture and thought, actually, he is struggling financially. And so she provided him details of Step Change, which is a charity offering free and confidential debt advice. And she also suggested that he contacted Macmillan Cancer for advice and support as well. So just by the way that she took the time, she listened, she had the resources and the knowledge of who to signpost Ray to. Ray came off that telephone conversation feeling relieved, as if a weight had been lifted. He felt more positive, and actually for the first time he felt someone had listened and supported him. So it's absolutely crucial that your staff have the skills, the knowledge and the resources to be able to offer that support to customers as and when they need it. So have a discussion with your staff, find out what support and what resources they need to be able to pass that on to customers as well. So moving on to the next section is the third section in the guidance is taking practical action. And this is divided into 3 subsections: product and service design, customer service, and communications. And because I'm just talking for a short time today, I'm just going to be concentrating on the customer service aspect. But if you've got any questions or queries about the product and service design, or the communications, please do get in touch and we can have a conversation and we can talk through some of the guidance that the FCA have covered, and we can talk about some practical strategies that you can put in place. But I really do want to concentrate on the customer service bit, because when I read the guidance, it was sort of guideline 80 that really stuck out at me. This, I feel, sums up exactly what the FCA is looking to achieve in this guidance, because frontline staff are absolutely crucial, but they need to feel supported by the management, by the company, and have the skills, the knowledge, the resources to make decisions about how they're going to adapt their approach to serve the customers. And it may be that they need to deviate away from company policies, script, and sort of come away from having timed target calls, and just really spend time focusing on that customer and making sure that customer feels supported. So I've got the story here of a lady called Anya, and I think her story actually really highlights how this guideline is really not actually common practice within organisations. So Anya is 29 years old, and her husband died 6 weeks ago in a car accident. And the car her husband was driving was a lease car registered in his name. And Anya contacted the lease company soon after the accident. She let them know what was going on, what had happened, that the car had been written off. However, last week, Anya opened a letter addressed to her husband from the leasing company, informing him of a large amount that was due to them because the car was written off in the accident. Now, I can't imagine what was going through Anya's mind at this stage. She, once the initial shock had worn off that they'd written to her husband about this, she did actually pick up the phone and call the leasing company, and she wanted to try and get this resolved and get the case closed and the account closed. However, when she spoke to the leasing company advisor, she was informed that as the car is not registered in her name, they're not able to speak to her, and she's not able to close the account. They need to speak to the registered holder of the account to be able to resolve the issue and close the account. Obviously, that's not possible. So Anya just quietly informs the advisor that her husband is the registered holder and he died in the accident. And sort of to my shock, really, when I heard this, the advisor actually states to Anya Unfortunately, the company policy states that they can only speak to the registered holder, and there's nothing more that she can do to help. And Anya left that telephone call absolutely overwhelmed, shocked. She felt like she was banging her head against a brick wall because there was no support, and she just promptly burst into tears, just not knowing what to do next. And this is just a real sort of key case study that highlights that this is happening sort of in other organisations as well, because frontline staff haven't got that autonomy, they haven't got that support to deviate for whatever reason. This particular advisor didn't take the time to fully listen, to show empathy. She didn't then work with Anya to sort of, you know, what could Anya do to get around this? What could the company do to support Anya whilst this issue was resolved? There was nothing like that to actually support Anya at this time of her grief. So this is just a sort of one of the key examples that is happening nowadays with organisations, where even just with the letter, companies are failing to record information correctly and passing it through every department in the organisation. So what I really want to encourage you to do is to really support your staff, understand what gaps are missing in their skills, what information do they need to have, what training do they need to have, do they need to have sort of deeper listening training, showing empathy, do they need to know what options are available if they do deviate from policy or script. Let them know exactly what they can do to fully support every single one of your customers. And I really do encourage you to keep this particular guideline 80 from the guidance, as a key element when you are putting together your vulnerable customer strategy and when you are putting together your staff training program, because this is ultimately the main objective and the main goal that you are looking to achieve. Moving on to the last section then, the monitoring and evaluation. One thing that did strike me in the FCA guidance is that the FCA are looking for organisations to create the culture where vulnerable customers are continually treated fairly, not just a one-off. They're not looking for the guidance to be used as a one-off checklist, tick list. They are wanting organisations to embed these guidelines, make it common practice on a daily basis that every single vulnerable customer is fully supported. And the way to achieve that is by monitoring and evaluating everything that the company is doing, working out whether it's working, what is working, what isn't working, and then making changes. And one thing that is really important is that the customers' needs, as they progress through vulnerable circumstances and situations, their needs will change. So it's really important that you are keeping in regular contact with your customers to find out how that change is impacting and what you can do to support them at their next stage in their circumstances. And the case study I've got here is an article I've just read recently about South Staff's Water and an initiative that they actually put into practice last year. So they set up a community hub in Wednesbury last year for an initial 12-month trial period. And the hub's main aim was to be a friendly, accessible location with staff on hand to enable customers who might not make contact with the company to actually interact with them. They went into the community and created this hub and welcomed people in the community. And the article was talking about the progress it had made a year on and how it had gone from strength to strength. And South Staff's Water said that visitors to the hub had significantly increased. People that were not interacting with them before were coming in. They were sharing and disclosing some of their vulnerable circumstances. They were asking for advice. They were South Staff's Water were able to talk them through billing, talk them through payment options. And also as well, they were able to collaborate with other organisations and make it a really good community hub. So now they're actually working with the Job Centre Plus, getting people into employment. They have the citizens advice coming out and doing surgeries, allowing people access to sort of legal advice and other advice. Health Watch is there on hand to give health and wellbeing advice to the community. And also South Staff's Water have collaborated with NPower to look at sort of how the utility companies can work together to look at the wellbeing and the support network that they can offer their customers. And based on this, they are continually having conversations with their customers, finding out what their needs are, how their needs might change, and they're evaluating and putting into practice things that those customers might need in the future. And they've actually gone from strength to strength. So again, if you want me to send you that article, it's a great read, and it might be something that you as an organisation can take some actions from. So please do let me know if you'd like to receive that. So that really sort of just covers just a few of the practical strategies that you could put into practice with your company. And I really do encourage you to start sort of at the very bottom, identifying vulnerabilities, getting to know what vulnerabilities are out there, have conversations with charities, organisations, and get to know customers who are perhaps in vulnerable circumstances, find out what their needs are, find out what they're looking to get back from your staff when they're having conversations with them. And I really do encourage you to read the FCA guidelines and take some of those guidelines and put them into practice. So really then the key question is what's next? And what you can do is that you can take the guidance from the FCA and some of the points that I've covered today, and you can do more research. You can get your staff involved, get them out into the community, get organisations on board, and you can start to create your own vulnerable customer strategy and your own vulnerable customer staff training programme. One of the key points that the FCA mentioned is that staff training is absolutely paramount, not just a one-off, but an ongoing. Give your staff continuous training to keep their resources and their knowledge up to date. And organisations can help you with that. Also as well, I can help you. So I can help you with identifying the gaps in your staff training skills. We can complete questionnaires with your staff, and together we can create a ongoing vulnerable customer training program that meets those needs, that fills those gaps. And also all my training is compliant with those FCA guidelines as well. So you will be your staff will be sort of ticking off the guidelines and knowing how to support vulnerable customers in line with FCA guidance. As I mentioned earlier, the FCA guidance paper is in its consultation period, and they've given up to the 4th of October for individuals and companies to give them feedback on that guidance. And then they will be taking all that guidance, reviewing it, and then updating the guidance. And then I anticipate that the final guidance will be published at the beginning of next year. So it gives us some time. It gives us sort of 3-4 months to really get you in shape, get that strategy developed, get your staff trained. So that when that final guidance is published, you are ready to go, because I honestly believe, and other vulnerable customer experts believe, that the FCA are going to weigh heavily on how firms treat vulnerable customers, and they will probably issue fines accordingly, and they can be quite hefty fines. I read just the other day of a fine that the FCA issued in July to Standard Life Assurance Limited. The fine was just over £30 million, relating to the unfair treatment of customers in the life insurance sector. So they really do put a huge emphasis on the way that firms treat customers, and the way they treat them fairly. And I believe that they will weigh heavily on the way firms treat vulnerable customers. So if you've looked at that timeline and you've thought, actually, this is something that I really do need to achieve, let's have a talk. We can have a free, non-obligation call. We can discuss what you're currently doing, what you're looking to achieve, and then we can sort of maybe put some ideas in place. If you're interested in that call, just type yes into the chat box, and I'll give you a call tomorrow, and we can get a date in the diary for that initial call. This is far too important a topic to actually just let it go. It's something that is becoming more and more prevalent with vulnerable customers. So it's absolutely crucial that organisations, that you know exactly how you're going to support your vulnerable customers. So that really does bring me to the end of this webinar. I really do hope that you've enjoyed it and you've gained something, and you felt it's been a good spending of your time. So it just leaves me now to sort of ask if you've got any questions. So if you have got any questions about anything that we've covered, or anything else with regards to vulnerable customers, or how I can support you, then please do pop something in the chat box. I just go quietly for a minute whilst I allow you time to think. Thank you, Sue, for your point. She's put great information, Helen. The examples were so pertinent. When I've done this research, it has been quite heartbreaking, really, to see that companies are still treating customers in this way, and sort of, almost failing them, really. So, it's crucial, really, that organisations really start to address this issue. So Lynn has put a question, do you offer a train the trainer program? So actually that is something I do offer. So we would work together, and I would put together the whole training package for you, and then I would come in and train your team on how to deliver that training packaging. So if that is something, again, that you're interested in, that's definitely something we can talk about, and we can and I can help you with. So that's a great point. Thank you again, Sue. She's put, let's hope the FCA guidance is rigorous, and the example of a few hefty fines should set an example to others. That's exactly my hopes as well, Sue. So that would be a great thing for next year to look for, is the cost of the fines that they will be actually issuing to organisations. So that's great. So again, if you've got any questions following this webinar, please do drop me an email, and we can, and I'll do my best to get back to you and answer those with as much information as I can. So some great comments there. Thank you very much. So Kevin says no questions but informative as ever. So thank you for that. So and Kevin's put, actually, I've read the proposed guidelines and I feel they are very rigorous but needed. I totally agree with you there, Kevin. I think they are very clear, they're very concise, how they've been laid out, especially in those sections It's a way of working through those sections, sort of to make sure that every single sort of checklist is completed before you move on to the next one. So I think it's very, very much needed. Some clear guidance for companies at long last. So, and I do believe that even though these are for the financial sector, every single one of those guidelines is relevant across all sectors, all industries. So even if you're not from the financial industry, these guidelines completely apt for you in your organisation. So please do download them and get a copy. And I will sort of keep everyone updated as and when the final guidance is published as well. So hopefully we can, that will be coming out early next year. So there aren't any more questions. So I think we've probably come to an end now, but thank you so much for your time this morning. I really do hope that that you've gained some information there, some relevant case studies as well. I think case studies are a good way of showing good practice and not so good practice. So keep an eye out on the news as well for some scenarios and some stories of customers maybe being treated well, or maybe treated poorly from organisations, and please do share those because I'd love to know as well. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have an enjoyable rest of the day, and I will be in touch. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.